What's going on, everybody? Aaron here, helping musicians get better, faster. And what you just heard were the trombone 11th and 12th grade audition excerpts for Florida All-State for 2023. I always feel like there's so much to preface in that. Now, before I dig into my audition preparation tips for these two excerpts, go ahead and make sure, if you haven't done so already, snag these books. I do have links in the description for both down below, but let's get into it. Let us start actually with the technical. So this particular technical is a little wild, to say the least. So the first big thing to worry about with the technical, of course, is the less than normal, we'll say, rhythms. And there's so many of them that I don't think it's worth breaking down each one in particular. But what I do want to suggest to you is how to practice each of these different little rhythms. And really the primary way is going to be slow metronome work and making sure you're doing everything exactly as written. If you put a metronome with threes going and to where you can physically see that, you can see where you're supposed to play. Like in the very first big beat, you can see that you're supposed to play on the first one and the third one and not on the second one. And as you practice, you can make sure that all of your rhythms and beats work out to where you can see all of them and how they work out, and then separate yourself from the metronome and make sure you can maintain that time. Something that can also help you with that is if you practice and you record yourself but you keep a metronome on and keep those threes going. And if you hear yourself deviating from those threes in that recording, that means you're not keeping that time strict. You can even look for a situation where you can mute your metronome over a little bit of time. So maybe you get started with it and you turn it off. And then when you go back and listen to it, you can sync up your metronome like in person, but in the recording, it's not there. And you can see if you're lining up and if you've maintained that tempo in person. So what you can do is you can actually record your metronome and then have that play through your speakers for a little bit, and then it'll turn off. And then when you listen back, you can start your metronome at the same time and see if you maintain that tempo. But other than rhythms, there actually is a lot of music to worry about in here. Make sure that you're really looking at what the dynamics are doing. There's a lot of times where we have a long time to get loud or quiet, and there's a lot of times where we have like a beat to get loud or quiet. So like the very first one, you're going from forte and decrescendoing to piano over the course of like half a measure, and then gradually over the course of a couple measures getting back to your forte. So make sure you're really making a big show out of all the different dynamics. That said, try your best not to shout on that dee da da dee da 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 dee da as it gets louder and louder. It's so high up in the tessitura. It can get really, really brassy and edgy, so be careful about that. We don't want to ruin our good sound to make a lot of volume. We do want to be exciting, but we don't want to sacrifice good sounds to do so. Now, something that I think a lot of judges are going to be listening for are the accents and measure 17 and the phrase that kind of follows it. Dee da dee da da dee da da dee. All of those, make sure those pop a little bit, but they're not, aggressive and uncharacteristic as well. And if you've seen any of my videos on any of these sorts of things, you know what I'm going to say about the writ at the end. Don't stomp on the brakes and slow down too fast too much. Also, do not crescendo anymore. You've already hit the volume that they want you to be. Don't add more decrescendo into it. So just a nice easy ending, because you're pretty much playing half of the actual etude. So don't do what's not written, even though it might feel natural to do it. I'm always nervous about adding things at auditions because then it becomes subjective for the judge. But let's move on to the lyrical. Now, in comparison to the weirdness that is the technical, the lyrical actually makes a lot of sense. We do want to still maintain being rhythmic, making sure that 16ths or dotted 8/16ths and all those things are very snappy while maintaining the lyricism of the row shoe. Make sure, like in situations like measure 14, where you have those accents on 2 and 4, make sure those pop, dee-da-dee, da-dee. Nice little pop there, not necessarily marching band style accents, but just bringing them out, and that same goes for every other accent that's in this thing. That's just an example. I also think that dynamically, this piece is a really good way for you to show off your extremities of playing. It doesn't have quite the dynamic diversity that the technical had, but what it does have, and what is still a test for musicians, is these terrace dynamics where it's quiet and then very loud suddenly with nothing to really get you to one or the other. So I think this is a test of the first half of the etude being able to play nice and quiet and then jump into that forte there, getting into measure 10. But once we get done with that half note tied to the 16th, the measure 11, all of a sudden playing quiet again, not decrescendoing through that half note, even though that seems logical. And if you were to play this in a performance, I would be down for that. But in an audition setting, show off that you can do literally what's on that piece of paper. Because I think what is on this piece of paper actually does show some maturity in your musicianship. Now, in both etudes, take the opportunities to do any alternate positions that you can to keep things clean. Like for instance, that 16th note run there, measure 11, C, B natural, C, D. Highly suggest doing D in 4th position. It just makes it so you can just kind of go back and forth between 3 and 4 during that. And actually in the lyrical, and I forgot to mention this, but there's a lot of opportunity in those arpeggios at the end to do D in 4th position. So as you practice this thing slow, look for opportunities where you might be able to clean it up a little bit by using alternate positions. As far as these 2 etudes, I think that's all I've got for you all today. Lyrical is pretty straightforward. Technical is going to require a lot of that annoying, making sure it's perfect. Make sure you're aware of the changes with the chromatic scale and the major scale. There's now a high and low register cap. But otherwise, if you like this video and you found it really helpful, consider hitting that like button and pushing subscribe. I'm able to get more content like this out there to you. And if you hit subscribe and hit that notification bell, just gets it directly to you. But anyways, y'all, I'm Aaron. Be happy, never satisfied, and good luck with your preparation.